Without further ado, let's begin our program with our first performer. Please join me in welcoming Katie Rodriguez Bannister, spoken word performer, speaker, author, and disability educator, to the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon. How are you? Wonderful. I'd love to share a poem that I wrote. Disability pride. We want equality. Advocate and penetrate for an inclusive society. We're willing to do our part. We are not looking for a free ride. We want to come and go as we please with autonomy and personally pride. Disabilities come in different forms, physical, sensory, and the brain. If we don't feel equally included, hell yes, we will complain. Don't look at us with pity. Focus on what we can do. Knowing, growing, and accepting the fact disabilities can happen to you. So we honor disability pride. We refuse to hide. Able and disabled collide. Hold on, it's a bumpy ride. I have the joy of introducing Liam and the ladies. Liam Williamson is 10 and a half years old. He is nothing stop him. Not autism, not mean bullies, not even his triplet brothers who sometimes drive him up a wall. He loves playing pinball, being on stage, singing his songs, acting in musicals, and making people laugh. He has walked the plank as Captain Hook in Peter Pan's Task, team activities for special kids. He has made audiences applaud at Ignite Theater as Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh Jr. He played Gaston in Heroes vs. Villains and Weaselton in Frozen Jr. He won the 2024 Evening of Entertainment, sponsored by Access for All and the Recreation Council of Greater St. Louis. His mom, Colleen, and his aunt, Annie, accompany Liam by playing acoustical guitar and stand-up bass, respectively. Please welcome Liam and the ladies.
Swinging on the star. Here we go.
Oh, would you like to start? Can movies no miniature and be better off than you are? Or would you rather be a mule? A mule is an animal with long funny ears. He kicks up at anything he hears. His back is broad, but his brain is weak. He's awfully silly with a stubborn streak. And right away, if you hate to go to school, you may grow up to be a mule. Oh, would you like to swing on a star? Carry moonbeams home in a jar and be better off than you are? Or would you rather be a pig? A pig is an animal with dirt on his face. His shoes are a terrible disgrace. He's got no manners when he eats his food. He's stout and lazy and extremely rude. And if you don't give a feather or a fig, you may grow up to be a pig. Oh, would you like to swing on a star? Carry moonbeams home in a jar but read a book. To fool the people is his only fraud. And though he's slippery, he still gets caught. And if that sort of life is what you wish, you may grow up to be a fish. And all the monkeys are in the zoo. Every day you'll see quite a few. So you'll see it's all up to you. You may be better than you are. You could be swinging on a star.
All right, we got an old country standard here.
This one is one of the first songs I've ever played, so here we go.
It's called Old Chunk of Coal.
If you know it, you know it.
Sing along if you wish. Ready, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, I'm just an old chunk of coal, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday.
That's right.
I'm gonna grow and glow till I'm so pure perfect. I'm gonna put a smile on everybody's face. I'm gonna kneel and pray every day. Lest I should have become vain along the way. And I'm just an old chunk of gold now, Lord. But I'm gonna be a diamond someday. I'm gonna go over the best way to walk. I'm gonna search and find a better way to talk. I'm gonna spit and polish my old rough edge self until I get rid of every single flaw. I'm gonna be the world's best friend. I'm gonna go around shaking everybody's hands. And I'm gonna be the cotton picking rage of the age. I'm gonna be a diamond someday. Well, I'm just an old chunk of gold, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday. I'm gonna grow and glow till I'm so pure perfect. I'm gonna put a smile on everybody's face. I'm gonna kneel and pray every day. Unless I should have become vain along the way. But I'm just an old chunk of gold now, Lord. But I'm gonna be a diamond someday. Yeah, I'm just an old chunk of gold now, Lord. But I'm gonna be a diamond someday.
Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to our performers and spoken word artist, Katie, as well. Thank you so much. So I have the distinct honor of introducing our moderator for today, who is quite impressive, who will also introduce our impressive panelists. Dr. T. Husky earned her medical degree from Northwestern University Medical School in Chicago, Illinois in 1996, and then completed a physical medicine and rehabilitation residency at the University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City, Kansas. She joined the faculty of Washington University School of Medicine in 2003, with her most recent position being professor in the Division of Neurorehabilitation in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. She is a teaching faculty member in the Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation Residency Program. She has served on the Medical Executive Committee of the Rehabilitation Institute of St. Louis since 2004, first as Vice President of the medical staff, then as President from 2007 to 2017. Dr. Husky's clinical practice focuses on improving function after a disabling illness. She specializes in improving brain recovery after a stroke, traumatic brain injury or brain illness, and attending to patients with medically complex conditions, including major organ transplants and advanced cardiac intervention. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1991 when she was completing her undergraduate studies at Northwestern University. She has required motorized mobility since 2000. On a very personal note, she proudly boasts about the best part of being disabled, which is her disabled seat or section at Busch Stadium. She refers to this as true baseball heaven. So with no further ado, Dr. Husky.
Thank you very much. I am so honored to be here, especially since we're celebrating Disability Pride today. I think the advancements that this country has made in recognition of disability and bringing about the rights of those who are disabled definitely serves to be celebrated. But thank you, Darla, for a very nice introduction. It's true. I have to say that first video made by the History Museum about St. Louis, who is not proud today to be from St. Louis? Hello. I only became a, quote, St. Louisan in 2001 when I moved here, but who knew the rule that once you fall for a guy or someone from St. Louis, you too will come live in St. Louis. So I'm gonna form a club called U2, not the band, but U, Y-O-U, 2, T-O-O. Currently, I need to find someone to make up buttons so I can give them out. Because after that video, oh my God, I'm so proud to be from St. Louis. All right, so I need to describe myself. I am a Southeastern Asian female. I have long black hair. I wear dark rimmed glasses. I am in a blue dress today, which is rare for me because most of the time I'm too lazy, but it's special. And my pronouns are she and her and hers. So let's start about a brief history of disability here and how it affects in America. So let's see if I can work. One thing about technology. Who doesn't love technology? Suddenly I can be taller than I was when I was able to stand and walk. And so all I needed a wheelchair to be able to do is elevate me to a point where I can roll up to a bar and get my elbows on the bar. And then say, make it a double. So, now into the history. Looking at our timeline, it's been a long time. It's been quite a bit of work. Starting back, we can go back as far as the 1800s, where really there wasn't anything. And I think there was disability for a long, long time, but thank goodness for family and community, we were taken care of but we weren't really seen. And it wasn't until soldiers coming back from wars, thank goodness for wars, because it made us better in recognizing who we need to honor. And so we had soldiers coming back from World War I and World War II, where finally disability is now recognized. I need to tell you that it's important because my specialty, my medical specialty of physical medicine and rehabilitation, otherwise known as physiatry or physiatry, came from the wars. We first got our hold after World War I, and then World War II. Suddenly medicine got a lot better at taking care of soldiers in the field, but when we brought them home alive, they were still, quote, broken. And so in 1947, the American Board of Medical Specialties finally recognized physical medicine and rehabilitation as a specialty. You're lucky I'm not going to go through the entire boring history of my specialty because that's a 2-hour lecture. But right around that time, the world was recognizing that we needed to do more for each other. So of course, thanks to 1935, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt started with the Social Security Act. And that was in 1935 that we finally are looking at how we start taking care of each other. And so, of course, after the wars and realizing we have veterans who have given their lives to protect this country, we gotta take care of them when they get back. And so that became a major movement for not only care, but research. And so our understanding was expanding, but it took really the major growth of disability rights and civil rights to be starting to be recognized, of course, in the tumultuous 60s, and then finally for disability rights in the 80s and 90s that we really started making our headway. And so I'm going to go through some specific legislation that you're all familiar with that finally codified what I think this country was moving towards, a recognition of what will bring equity and kindness of caring for all. So the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was brought about because the government needed to have a power in saying what designated. So really the Rehabilitation Act was landmark in the terms that it was the first enacted legislation that affected the entire country. But the government felt that at that time it could really only get to enforcement of things that it had its hand in, AKA what is funded by the federal government. And so any government and government institutions or any institution that receives federal funding had to abide by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And it too had sections that broke down there are many sections of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that I finally dug out, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, I do not want to spend time talking about all of the sections of the laws. And so when they say section like 501, that means that there was a section 101 going all the way to 7. And so we're just going to go by what really affects the lives of people living with disabilities. And so in these sections of 501, it was saying, looking at really employment, what was happening to employment. But it only affected government institutions and institutions that received government funding. 502 looked at how we were going to promote access and compliance to things of the barriers in the society. But again, it is only affecting government institutions and government-funded institutions. 503 prohibited employment discrimination. And it's against people and how they perform at work, and you won't lose your job because you have a disability. 504, now that is really, really much more in depth. 504 continues to this day to be a legislation, a section of legislation often quoted upon when there is a violation that doesn't cover the provision about equal access. And that means equal access to everything, to where you live, to where you work, to recreation. Once again, though, only government and government institutions and government funded. And finally, 508 that started looking at addressing technology. And thank goodness, like I said, technology, it's going to get better and better. So we're going to move on to something that we're celebrating today. The American with Disability Act passed in 1991, officially signed in 1991, but it passed in 1990, enacted in 1992, effect, blah, blah, blah. You continue to having the recognition that now the federal government can also have say in not only where it works and where it puts its money, which means it's your money, it's our money, but now it says in public spaces, meaning places that don't necessarily have federal funding for its action. Now it covers the entire United States. And passing that, President George Herbert Bush, I think that was a big accomplishment during his administration. Once again, it followed a very similar pattern to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It in itself divided it up by titles, and very specific titles. And so as you can see, very much it affects all areas of our lives, especially those with disability. The funny thing is that things about compliance, about architectural advancements and barriers and things, people without disabilities very much enjoy the curb cuts and the automatic doors and widening spaces. And we don't mind sharing, I don't think, at all. And so I think it's important that we recognize what great things the ADA did to have us look at society and how we can be better. So, last thing is this idea of what is disability under the ADA? Because that becomes a legislative question. And of course, every time that you argue any type of discrimination, you gotta prove that how is it that you're part of this class that has been violated against. Very specifically, the ADA did define that if it affects your way that you live your life in a substantial way in major life activities, then it is claimed as a disability and is covered under the ADA. The very specific other language of record of such impairments, again, that goes through your medical records, but also through your life. That all comes into play. And so those are very important things that we're going to start discovering more and more as the ADA is often challenged, and that protecting the ADA means protecting everyone. And so all this legal talk is that we need to remember there is a definition under law what is a disability. Okay, so quick challenges. One thing about enacting any law, especially the ADA, it's about enforcement of that law. Not only recognition of the law, but then enforcement of the law. And believe it or not, the continued enforcement of the law not only strengthens it, but increases awareness. And I know that you always feel like it's a constant battle, but it's one that as it becomes more recognized and refined, it'll be part of our lives. And so it's good to have this discussion today. And we're very lucky to have 3 panelists who embody what the ADA does. One thing about disability is it can be visible, very much so. I take up a lot of room, can't miss me, and it can be invisible. And so that recognition of the invisible is very much often forgotten. And so we are very lucky because we have panelists that have invisible disabilities. So I'm going to introduce you to our panelists, and we're going to talk about the challenges, the advancements of the ADA, and what we all need to do to move forward. First, we have Ms. Delinda Bright. She's right there, and she is a director of community programs in Deaf Empowerment Awareness Foundation. She was, of course, born deaf and kind of in a space where there wasn't a reason why she couldn't do anything. I guess that's what the way the family was going to say, you're going to do it. The idea of mainstreaming children into education and recreation, it was very important, and Linda was very much pushed to do that her whole life, that she could do whatever-thing else that other kids can do. She was actually club president of Future Teachers of America. That likely was something that was very hard to try to push through. She received a master's degree in counseling and psychology and spent 33 years working in with communication disorders and with the community. Our next panelist is Luke Barber. He's right here on the right. He's a disability advocate. He received a bachelor's in public policy from the University of Missouri, right here in St. Louis. And he currently serves on all sorts of organizations in the county, talking about programs and legislation that affects those with disabilities. He's a board member of multiple boards. He was telling me that most of his time, that's what he does, quote unquote, for fun. He likes to go to board meetings and make the disability voices heard. Whoops. Our last panelist is Yeon Choi, and you should congratulate him. He finished his master's right here in St. Louis just this past May. He was born deaf, and he immigrated here to America, and he proceeded to get his education here in America, and he is a very much a advocate for public policies and community advocacy. That's what he wants to do. He has a deep passion for advancing not only human rights, but those with disabilities especially. He's worked with many deaf organizations, and we're very excited to have him. I'm sorry, he was born blind. So his blindness, I'm completely confusing myself. And he's worked with, and you can't see his companion. Kaplan is, I think, under the table. Kaplan has been with him throughout his education, and definitely for college and his master's degree. And he's been fostering, he's working with fostering organizational growth to help people with blindness and deafness. So, there's some questions that we wanted to tackle, and so I think the first question, as you can see, we're going to talk about experiences. Luke is going to help us to begin the discussion about what is experience with accessibility in public spaces.
So growing up, a lot of times I wasn't always aware of things. I wasn't paying as much attention to certain things. And so recently, a lot more of stuff has become more noticeable, particularly in those retail kind of spaces. We often don't think about how narrow the aisles or the shelves are. In sort of retail spaces, we often don't think about how the pathways and walkways are in some of those areas. And so we often don't think about the fact that those spaces really should be that sort of 36, 42 inches or have that 5-foot turn radius until we sort of are in those spaces and can kind of see whether it really meets that sort of measurement or not.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to the second question, but specifically what Luke had pointed out about sidewalks is finally there are rules about how wide the sidewalks need to be, and that those rules came from the ADA, and the sidewalks have to be at least 36 inches, and that the spaces have to allow a 90-degree turn. And so there are very technical things that came out of the ADA. Second question regards to how it affected educational opportunities for those with disabilities.
First question. I think you wanted to go back to the first. Do you want to go back to the first question?
Never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we're all right.
Second question was, how did the ADA affect educational opportunities with disabilities? Luke, would you like to start that?
A lot of stuff with education piggybacks on sort of the 504 Rehab Act, as well as the IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act, and often required least restrictive setting, meaning people that were mainstreamed in schools, and the providing of academic accommodations for those that are considered reasonable accommodations. Oftentimes you'll see things like extended time or larger print or being able to record a lecture or receive PowerPoints in advance.
Seyun, what would you like to say and how it affected your opportunities?
Yeah, so I want to chat quickly about the how IEP has significantly sort of changed the opportunities that students in the public school setting receives education. So with my blindness in particular, when the diagnoses were shared with the members of the IEP team, and they have discussed this is a progressive eye condition specifically. The Braille instructions were all incorporated in a public school setting. So I was raised here in St. Louis, and primarily post-immigration. And in public school setting, this is something that would have not been possible from where I came from. At first, it is easy to I was overcoming my personal denial around my blindness, but then because of the opportunities that were provided in public school setting, thanks to, again, the individualized education plan, I immediately began to tackle on things like being able to travel independently, right? And that, I think, is a holistic package here as far as the incorporation of what really the IDEA, as Luke discussed, does, the Individual Education Act, as far as something like an IEP, right? Now, you have a team of educators and professionals within the field of blindness who knows what they're talking about, the expertise in their field, are willing to set me up for success, because now, in addition to the public school course load, I really had access to things like Braille literacy, right? And I think for a blind person, I really fundamentally believe that Braille is an integral part of one's ability to read and write. Yes, you can literally write Braille, and I felt that this is a part where I just could not ignore. So eventually I had to really suck up and just start learning Braille pretty quickly. And the second piece of that equation is about independent travel. And that does take away from some of your regular curriculum of courses, yet I had an opportunity to, not take a class like a PE. I could just not take it, so that was pretty great. But let's be honest. I mean, if you have flying balls in a gym as a blind person, it can be quite challenging. So PE was never really my favorite class. I'll just straight up admit it. However, thanks to the orientation mobility instruction I've gotten, and now to a guide dog travel that I do today with Kaplan, without that foundation and without really that piece of education that was provided to me, right? Being able to cross streets independently, being able to navigate college campuses and indoor spaces, largely that does stem from things like the opportunity to be able to learn when to cross, when is it safe to cross, and judge when to cross. How do you navigate public transportation? And so I think that that's a really big entity here, and I felt that it was, and that is largely in part due to, again, the passage of the IDEA and as part of the sections within the ADA that does promote equal education in public schools.
We'll move to the next question.
Oh, my name's Delinda. So, my experience has been very different than the other panelists here, because I don't have cognitive or, physical disability, really. My experience with education has been very different, and I'm very grateful for the ADA, because, that helped me graduate as well. And at the beginning, in the early 80s, I was in 3rd grade, and my teacher had a meeting with my mother. And my mother said, okay, I want to get books from her class and bring them home so that I can teach her myself. And the principal told my mom, why do you need to have books at home? And my mom was like, so I can help her read and understand what's going on, help with homework, that kind of thing, so when we go back to school. And the principal said, no, you don't need to worry about that. I'm deaf, can't read. Won't ever read above a 3rd grade level. And my mom was like, excuse me? And said, hold on a second. Don't you dare limit my daughter's education. And if you do, you're going to be hearing from my lawyer. And that, after the Rehabilitation Act. So, my mom taught herself the laws and was helped to understand my rights. And that really influenced education for me. then, when I was a junior, yeah, I'm that old. I really wanted to play sports. But I was really frustrated that the coaches weren't understanding me. And so they ended up calling special education and asked for an interpretation team to come to practices. And they said, no, only for school. And my mom was like, the school provides these sports. It's involved with school. And they said, no. There was a lot of arguing about it. Finally, after a few weeks, my mom was expressing her feelings and had been fighting with them, and she told me I'm really sorry, I've tried my best. But we actually went to the president's office of the school district. And I told my mom to stay outside and that I wanted to go in and talk. So I went up to the special education president's office, and I sat down. I asked to see specifically the president. I didn't give my name, I didn't give any prep work or anything. I sat down and I said, okay. We met. Dr. Diane. Hi. I did not accept an interpreter. I was writing, and I said, my name's Delinda. Her face completely dropped. She realized who I was and realized that I was deaf and came without an interpreter and was choosing to communicate in a different way. And I was telling her, I need an interpreter when I go to sports practice so that I can fully understand what's going on. So I went to argue with her in person. 2 days later, I got an interpreter. And that was for my basketball practice. So, today, I see huge improvements. I see more and more interpreters provided and available in school, after school, at sports, but we still need more. The school district only sees the cost of interpreters, not the necessity. So that has been a huge battle that we're trying to overcome. And we never, ever can stop fighting. They have to stop looking at the cost and understand the necessity of having access.
Well, let's see what she says about the next question, Delinda. How was your employment journey and job search affected?
When I started working, I didn't have any problems at all. I was lucky because I could talk and lip read and communicate gesturally. I have 2 brothers. My second brother, he was deaf as well. Looking back, we fought and it was a struggle and trying to get the communication. A lot of employers think, I can't communicate with them, they're deaf. No, that's not gonna happen. But for me, I was always sneaking in to get a job quickly. First time the interview I had, I got the job right away. I realized they didn't realize I was deaf until after I was hired. They were, okay. One experience I had, I applied for a job at a restaurant. It was long ago when I was in high school. I applied for that job. I was green, I was fresh. It was one of my first jobs. I was a shift supervisor. I thought, fine. Realized 2 weeks into the training that I needed an interpreter. I didn't need the interpreter for the work itself, but for the training, I did need an interpreter. And then they let me go. And I asked them why. We can't provide an interpreter for you because you're deaf. And I filed a motion against them. That was my only experience with employment discrimination, was that incident. With my job, so many discrimination in work environments that I've seen for deaf people. Communication is a big barrier. I still advocate for the deaf. Try to educate employers that deaf can work. They can do anything except hear. Communication is not only spoken, you can write, you can email, text, you can learn to sign yourself. There's so many different ways to communicate. Everybody emails every day. Like, tons and tons of emails go back and forth every day. So one big concern right now that I'm seeing is the use of AI. That can be wonderful, but it's not so wonderful for us. So that's one new area I'm pulling up my pants and get ready to go and advocate for our rights.
Sayun, how about you tackle the next question about the ability to participate in activities?
Sure. So, as Dr. Husky discussed earlier, the ADI really had to hit the ground running when it comes to public and private entities to design architectural spaces, facilities, our places of living, and our places of recreation to be more accessible. And that is, I believe, it's a work in progress. And I'll leave it at that. Unfortunately, my first year at St. Louis University was quite an interesting time. I, along with many other undergrads, was attending a SLU 101, which is an orientation for new incoming undergraduate students. And we had an opportunity to stay there at their newest state-of-the-art, again, air quote, state-of-the-art Grand Residence Hall. And I learned that in Grand Hall, I was using my long white cane because that was about a month before I got my guide dog. I was using my long white cane to find my room, and then I realized, I started feeling around the wall. Don't know anybody, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is completely new. So I sort of got I found out my floor, what room I was in. There were brailles included on the elevator. And then I could not find the room that I was looking for because there was no missing braille. Typically, braille signages are posted along with the numbers, at least beneath the numbers, so you can locate the rooms. And subsequently, this is sort of an issue when I go to a mall or when I might be at a public space. Sometimes there are, unfortunately, amenities that are just not often included, are not very accessible. And while there are efforts, there are continued efforts, right? Things like inclusion of braille or audible elevator signals, things like even a pedestrian signal that beeps, tells you when to cross the street. I think those are all elements that leads up to you being able to just have fun with your friends, have fun with whoever you may be, to be able to enjoy all these public spaces that anyone would otherwise enjoy. But oftentimes, I at least find that there are things that are not tested properly. A group of friends and I went to actually a hotel in Chicago. It was a Hyatt hotel, so hotels, public spaces, better be accessible. And then we went up to an elevator, and then to the right of that elevator there was a screen. And we pressed a button that was labeled audio instructions. Pressed the audio instructions and it says, select your floor. And it said 1, 2, and 3. We were on the 5th floor. And it just stopped talking. So it was pretty abrupt. So we, of course, had to rely on another guest to assist us because the front desk worker were not there. So it is these little things, I believe, that sometimes causes really huge frustrations, and especially when you just want to get to your room after playing blind hockey. I mentioned earlier that I really didn't like PE, but I do play a lot of adaptive sports. And we had a hockey bag with us. We were already out of town, so we were pretty flustered by a lot of new things. And to just not be able to get to our room, I think that speaks volumes as far as the foundation is there, but there's definitely a lot more to be done. And I think that sort of sums up my experience as far as here's what we have right now, and we want to celebrate that. But here are continued barriers, things like being able to shop independently, right? And I think that it's the ongoing discussion, and I believe it's still work in progress.
I totally agree with you wholeheartedly. I often go to events and I call for that day, let them know I need an interpreter. And then they say, oh, we offer it another night, not that night. It's too expensive of a cost to have another night. Or you can't sit in that area, you have to sit way back there, out in the balcony. I'm willing to pay more for close seating, but they're like, no, for the interpreter, you have to sit up in the balcony. And I'm okay. So, yes, I agree that the building, the elevator, they're starting to do things to improve that, but they don't take into account visual or hearing needs. We need to advocate for captions in videos. Oh, and they say, oh, we have captions over here at the venue. We have it over here, but I'm watching the action, then I have to look up at the caption way over there, and you're making me miss 3/4 of the action at your venue. It's not worth it. It's not worth my time and money. So yes, I notice buildings are improving, accessibility, curb cuts, different things like that are improving, but there's so much work still to do, especially for people that are deaf and blind.
I think another question that has affected many will be the next question, about invisible disabilities. And so, Luke, can you tell us about that?
Oftentimes, when it comes to invisible disabilities, it's often people's perceptions, people's mindsets that get in the way, that create additional barriers to success. Often people will say, oh, you can't or you won't, which really is limiting the capabilities and the potential that an individual has. And this can also be stigmatizing and promotes this idea of what's known as internalized ableism. That because you've heard you can't or you won't over and over again, you start to believe that you can't or you won't. When in fact you might actually can or might try it and find out that you're actually good at it. And another thing is that there's often too also a comparison effect that we see in society, where people compare the different disabilities sort of against each other, sort of the physical versus sort of the invisible. And so often people will say, you don't look disabled, or we can't see your disability, or you don't quite, they think that we don't quite meet the definition of disability when they don't realize that the definition of disability actually includes much more on paper than they're thinking, because it really includes any really health condition that has the impact on daily living.
Luke, do you think that the ADA wasn't effective at addressing invisible disabilities?
I think the problem with invisible disabilities is that people don't necessarily realize or don't have the necessary understanding that they should do, and that they don't necessarily have sort of that compassion or their understanding of how to help someone when they aren't able to necessarily recognize these signs and symptoms of that diagnosis or signs and symptoms of that condition. I know too myself, when it comes to some accommodations and things, don't always match up to the conditions that I currently have exactly, because some of the other accommodations that are used for some of the other kind of more physical disabilities are also impactful to those with invisible disabilities, or for those that are blind or hard of hearing, and how those accommodations also impact or are helpful as well. Like large print is a common accommodation used for those with lower vision. But they don't realize that that actually helps with more processing or understanding of material. Closed captionings as well allows an individual to be able to see or hear stuff at a slower speed, and so it helps with processing. And so a lot of times too, we often won't see that this limiting mindset with some of the accessibility in education or at places where they think, oh, because you have this condition, you're only allowed a certain set or a certain list of accommodations, and not realizing that they can be helpful for things other than they were originally intended for.
I think this next question is kind of a loaded question, but I don't know about you, but I'm ready for it. What are some areas that needs to be strengthened and updated? I think Seyun, you wanted to say something about transportation?
Oh, I could go on and on. I think there's people in the audience that knows about this. So I want to make sure that we have enough bandwidth to at least touch a little bit of all of the areas, but I think the two things that I'm focused on are transportation equity and digital accessibility. And particularly concerning at least the rise in artificial intelligence, but also mobile applications. So I want to start with public transportation, but I also want to do a little quick plug to Paraquat's public policy team, who I've done my practicum at for the last about 600 hours or so. Yeah, 300 hours as a semester. So I had to go back to my academic brain for a second there. But during my time at public policy division within Paraquat, there was a group called SMART that was convened towards, I want to say, March or April of last year. We didn't have a name back then, but we eventually came up with one. And that SMART acronym stands for St. Louis Metropolitan Alliance for Reliable Transportation, which is a group of disability advocates, again, people with disabilities themselves and their allies, have sort of joined forces to really combat the transportation crisis that we were experiencing in the St. Louis region. Largely in part because of Metro, who is the entity and governing body of public transportation. So actually, I want to give a little description of a button that I got earlier upstairs. I have a little button of our SMART logo, and it has a little infographic thing on it on my right side of my chest. And I want to represent it because transportation has become a real issue. I know many of you know that as a blind person that I'll never be behind the wheels, so I don't already have that kind of autonomy to be able to get to myself between places. I work out in West County Mall, which takes about roughly an hour and 15 minutes to comfortably get there, and I mean comfortably get there with fixed out buses and trains. There is a paratransit service available called Colorado, which many of you probably are familiar with, but they are literally in crisis right now. They're denying so many trips. People with disabilities cannot even get scheduled trips. There hasn't been any modernization or updates to the transportation plan. And heck, you can't even reserve a ride online. Like, you have to call them on 7:30 in the morning sharp. That already is a huge setback, I think, for people with disabilities who just wants to go have fun, go out to places, try to get to our doctor's appointments, try to get to our places of worship, try to get to our places of work and school. So that's what we're doing. And I think you should talk to JMO, who I believe is in the audience, to learn a little bit more about it. But the moral of the story is, transportation, I really think there's a lot of work to be done here. I know even with the latest revisions to the ADA in 2008, or 2007, 2000, whenever that is, rideshare platforms like Uber and Lyft were not popular back then, which it is now, and that has immensely helped disability community at large. But through my time as a board member within the National Federation of the Blind in Missouri, I hear stories after stories after stories, and my personal experiences with those rideshare platforms and being refused rides because I am traveling with a guide dog. There is nothing more frustrating than to try to get to work, to West County Mall, pay a $21 Lyft ride, and to be told that by a driver when they roll a window down and they say they will not transport me because I'm blind and I'm with a guide dog, a service animal. Again, by definition, in ADA, service animals should and must accompany their handler no matter where we are. Restaurants, doctor's offices, museums, like here. I mean, you name it. But unfortunately, the rides that I pay for, strictly on the basis of the fact that Lyft drivers and Uber drivers are using their personal vehicles, I'm literally being slammed door against my face. And that is incredibly aggravating. It always gets me really heated. And I don't get angry very easily, except in situations where I know I've literally been slammed door on my face. And I have been refused rides. And that is a continued pattern, and it is happening across the country. I hear from my blind friends and allies of stories of their own when they are with their service animals or their guide dogs. We try to book our rides. We continue to get our doors, slammed at our faces, and we're driven off without our rides. Sometimes there's an inclement weather. We only get to our places. Yet we are not even entitled to get our rides that we sometimes work hard-earned money, that we try to get home, and then we're not just able to get home. Or we just deal with a bus that runs once an hour. So that is not a true independence to me, when we want to just want to be independent and try to make some money to pay our bills. And let's be honest, $20 for one-way trip is not exactly cheap. I cannot afford to pay $20, $25 to get to and from work each way. So, while the updates to the ADA are certainly long overdue, I think what we need to really focus on is, one, transportation equity, but also we really just need to do something about these rideshare companies to hold them way more accountable. They're not being held accountable right now. And I want to make sure my panelists also have some time on the mic. So I want to talk about digital accessibility as well. I know there was a discussion of artificial intelligence, and I believe there's a high potential there. Things like Be My Eyes, and recently the introduction of Be My AI, had really changed the game for at least persons like me who are not consuming information visually, to be able to get on-demand, in-depth image descriptions of anything that I send it to the AI model. It is pretty impressive. And I want to maybe at some point I can demonstrate it, but it is really cool. But lately, I believe there have been a lot of talks around at least making sure that websites and mobile apps are accessible, right? Oftentimes, people with disabilities, at least I know in my case, I use a screen reader on all of my devices to use apps and websites I enjoy every day. I mean, it could be, heck, Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook. I mean, I could scroll hours and hours on Facebook if I want to. But I know there are issues like, for example, like, I want to give a quick example of Snapchat, right? Which, you know, I'm 23, so a lot of people I'm sure in 20s or teens probably use Snapchat, even older folks. But that app is unfortunately not accessible for someone who's blind. And Instagram and Meta, who's a parent company of Instagram, they have found ways to make, you know, image contents really accessible through their artificial intelligence, again, who are continuing to make things more and more accessible. But Snapchat, by design, is still not accessible. So that's a communication barrier. So I think those are some of those opportunities I think we could keep going endlessly about, but I just want to go ahead and, I thought I'd throw it out there.
I think we have some time constraints, but I do want to get to the next question. And that I think Delinda was going to help with that, and how, you know, organizations can better support what was the spirit of the ADA.
When you hear the word celebration of the ADA,
When you hear people talk about the word celebrating ADA, you know, ADA's birthday, yes, we need to celebrate our, you know, freedoms through the ADA legislation. But we also need to use this time to help us change and reframe the way we think about how legislation is set up for us. For example, so we already talked some about like more businesses having things like ramps, elevators, having these accommodations. But we need to reframe to include the spirit of the ADA. So we already have ramps, we have those things. But what are other areas that people need to, and courts need to figure out we can improve on? For example, with legislation requirements for access, you know, ramps, elevators, like I said, how can we apply that in building permits and building codes to satisfy the ADA? Why not add more requirements to the codes to make sure that the loop system for hard of hearing, Braille, signs posted, closed captionings. How do we have these things involved in building codes and permits? It shouldn't only be ramps and elevators. So with education, we need to stop and think about money and the cost. And we need to stop thinking about money and the cost and start thinking about accessibility for all. For example, closed captionings is not just for deaf people. It really can help people with English barriers. If English is their second language, it can help people that are hard of hearing. It can help people that have hearing processing disorders. It can help people with cognitive disabilities. It can help people with autism. The list goes on and on. Captioning is beneficial for all, and it should be included, especially with children. It really excels their English, it excels their reading abilities. So we have to stop thinking closed captioning is just for deaf. No. Reframe your point of view, your thinking. Say, okay, closed captioning is beneficial for all. That means that you're business owners. When you put up videos, a Facebook video or Instagram, whatever, when you put something up on the TV, include captions. Don't depend on AI captions. Go ahead and put captions on your videos. Make it fully accessible for anybody. Reframe your thinking. That will help with building in the future with ADA. So it's important to change your perspective. Like, oh, this is just for these people. This is just for people with these disabilities. No. No, it's not just for baby boomers. It's for people today who are signing. And baby boomers can help and benefit with that too. They have disabilities as well. And so things like that will help in the long run.
You know what, I think that the issue is the time constraints, and we do want to finish on time. The last question is about budgetary constraints. Of course, there are budgetary constraints. Everything costs money. And so who decides on what that money is? I think it is very appropriate in this election year to know that you do have a voice, and that your individual voice is about your vote and who you're voting for that believes in the same things that you want. I think the thing about zoning and building requirements that Delinda mentioned, and laws against ride sharing and Uber that Seyun mentioned, oh yeah, those are laws that needs to be created and enacted. And it's funny, your vote is going to help those things. And so I really want to thank the panel for sharing their thoughts and opinions and personal experiences with the ADA, because, oh boy, you could stop any disabled person and they can give you definitely the good side of the ADA. Oh, but get ready. There's a long list of bad side. And actually, I'm a kind of person that thinks there's also a great comedy routine that everyone can talk about in terms of how the ADA got warped into, say, you going somewhere to ask if you could have accommodation, and quote, for people with invisible disability. It's funny, you don't look disabled. And so I think that Luke had brought that up, and those are just perceptions that as we as a society can change. But thank you very much for listening to us share our experiences. I am very, very excited to reintroduce Katie Rodriguez Bannister, because we get to hear more of her great poems. Thank you very much.
All right, what a lively discussion. Thank you. I learned a lot. Did you guys learn a lot? Excellent, excellent. All right, I got a quick something I'd like to close with, and then we've got more music. Okay, our mission today is clear. Work from love and give up on fear. Get out there, extend yourself with a friendly hello, knowing the universe is really in charge of the show. Disability pride, disability rights. Why do some gotta be so uptight? Automatic inclusion may be tough for some to see, but therein lies our mission. It's called advocacy. We are here, and some of us may be queer. We want a seat at the table, so get ready, all you able. Yes, we've made advances, and yes, we've made some inclusion, but there's more to do. It's up to all of you. Let's eliminate any and all exclusions. All right, how about right before lunch, a little rousing music to entertain us? Liam and the ladies, let's enjoy again.
It all started one Saturday morning when I was a kid. I was messing about doing whatever it was that I did. When my dad said, boy, I've got a job to do, but I can't do it by myself. He said, meet me in the front yard, I sure could use some help. Oh, Daddy had 2 shovels and he said, go dig us a hole. Dig a hole. And then we went to the store. Daddy said, we're gonna buy us a pole. I'd like to buy a pole, please. Well, the people there thought I was a little bit slow, cause I couldn't figure out what it meant. Until we stuck that pole in a hole. It's a wet cement. Oh, now I get it. We took that old American flag and we hung her up high. With a rope and a knot and a one of American pride. And then we sat back waiting for a breeze to come so we could watch her colors fly. We take that old American flag and we hung her up high. Well, soon my mama and my brothers and my sisters, they all came out. With a couple of neighbors wondering what all the fuss was about. So what's all of this fuss about? And then we kept Old Glory waving all day long and put her down when it got dark. And by an early next morning, me and Daddy were in the front yard. We took that old American flag and we hang her up high. With a rope and a knot and a one of American pride. And then we sat back waiting for a breeze to come so we could watch her colors fly. We took that old American flag and we hang her up high. Well, the years have passed and the fog since moved away. But I've been thinking about going back home for a visit any day. And when I drove around the block where I grew up, oh, I know just what I'll see. I'll see the stars and stripes and my daddy waving at me. He takes that old American flag and he hangs her up high. With a rope and a knot and a lot of American pride. And then he sat back waiting for a breeze to come so he could watch her colors fly. He takes that old American flag and he hangs her up high. We
to make one quick plug. Next weekend, Ignite Theater Company is doing an Arts for All inclusive performance, a neurodiverse cast of Finding Nemo, and they're going to have sign interpreters and visual descriptive services there, and it's going to be at the Robert Rhymes Theater in Kirkwood, and it's Finding Nemo, and Liam's a shark in it, so come check it out. And the triplets too.
They're not sharks.
Okay, we're gonna do one quick one.
Yeah, but this one is a little kid song, and this is for my mom and my aunt, and also for my grandpa. And this is his hat, even though he died of dementia, and I'm still sad. But anyhow, if you want to sing along, you could.
You'll figure it out real quick.
Anywho,
ready?
let it go. You're great and fancy, you're the bee's knees, 'cause you're the only fish in my sea. Delightful you are to me, easy breezy to love. Forget me nows, you fly with dove, growing up surrounded by love. Hands held high, you touch the sky, I kiss you on the nose. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Jump, 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 jumping jacks. Kiss, 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 back, back, back. Love, 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 love. Mama loves you so. Noontime sunshine, feel the breeze. Over to grandma's to buy some trees. Please, Granny, please, Granny, please, Granny, please. Quick, I need you now before I fall. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Read some books, turn off the TV, sing your song as well as you please. Twinkle and shine like a star in the sky. Up, up, up you fly. Visit with your neighbors, whistle your tune. X marks the spot where you land on the moon. You're my sweet dumpling, and that is why my mama's pride and joy. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Last one up like the letter Z. Newest branch on the family tree. This song's for you, so sing it with me. And learn your ABCs.
You know you're all
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Last time, sing along if you know it.
If you want to. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Going to be in my head for the rest of the day. Thank you so much. So I just want to ask that you all give an applause again for our wonderful panel, our moderator, and all of our performers. Again, you should have received an evaluation for today. If you did, we really would greatly appreciate you turning those in to Kimmy at the door there. We really do read each and every one of them, and they help to improve our programming. With no further ado, I'm sorry that we did not have time today for Q&A, but I believe all of our panelists are joining us for lunch. So if you have questions for them over lunch, feel free to try to hunt them down. And we hope that each and every one of you does join us for lunch around the corner in the AT&T room. Thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it.